I thought I was going to be making this podcast from the CPAC conference down in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. You know, that's the place where all the conservatives meet and greet each other once a year. I think it's called the Conservative Political Action Committee. Lots of speakers, lots of seminars, lots of hobnobbing. I went last year, only for a little bit, but I got a chance to meet a lot of people. A lot of people recognized me when I was walking around, which is very nice. I'm always surprised when it happens, but when you're on YouTube and minds.com as much as we are, well, it's nice when it happens, and it's nice when people really respond positively to what we're doing here. But I'm not going to CPAC this year. I changed my mind. So I'll be making this podcast right in good old Wilmington, Delaware, right up the turnpike from Washington, D.C. I was all geared up to go. Then I read an article about Pam Gellar. It was in Breitbart and a couple of other places. So Pam Gellar, of course, is one of the heroes, one of my heroes anyway, in this country for speaking the truth about Islam and creeping Sharia and all the ways people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about Islam and the violence that accompanies it. Sound familiar? So Pam was going to do a seminar on a panel discussion on free speech. So at the last minute, they called Pam and they said, listen, we're looking forward to your panel, but we don't want Jim Hoft on there. Now, Jim Hoft, he's the guy who started and the editor slash publisher of Gateway Pundit. First time I came across Gateway Pundit was during the Ferguson uprisings, where they martyred St. Michael Brown of Ferguson. Well, the Gateway Pundit is in St. Louis, so they broke a lot of good stories, and they're not afraid to just put it out there. What's happening? And so, I check in there from time to time. People send me stories and say, hey, check this out, check that out. But the organizers at CPAC were not very happy that Jim was on the panel. Apparently, Jim did a story a day, a month, a couple months ago. I don't know when. I don't even know the details. Apparently, Jim did a story that got the people who run the CPAC conference very unhappy. Some people that I know, whose value I trust, judgment I trust, they even called it fake news. Okay, so Jim, maybe his batting average is not 100%. But whatever Jim's batting average is, I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's way better than CNN's. And when I look at a story, I always evaluate it on the merits inside of the story. I mean, I want to know what's happening, and I want to know why they want us to believe that is true. And I found Jim and the Gateway Pundit to be a very important arbiter of that. I mean, let alone Pam Gellar. Then, she does the same thing. Except her batting average is 1,000% as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, so then I picked up another story almost at the same time, and it said Dinesh D'Souza was not going to be invited to speak there. If he was speaking, the invitation was rescinded, and the reason was because Dinesh did something he tweeted something out about the Florida mass shooting that did not meet with the approval of the organizers, and boom, they yanked it out. They said whatever he said was indefensible. Well, listen, if Pam Gellar is not going to be if she doesn't meet the high standards of CPAC, Dinesh D'Souza doesn't, if Jim Hoft doesn't, that's not really a place that I want to be, to tell you the truth. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. You're listening to the Colin Flaherty Don't Make the Black Kids Angry podcast. Here we talk about black violence, black on white crime, wildly out of proportion, and how so many reporters are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. Now, I'm probably not the best one to come up here and champion free speech for Pam Gellar and Dinesh D'Souza and Jim Hoft, because You know, when we were doing the YouTube channel and on my Facebook page and on Twitter and on my minds.com/Colin Flaherty channel, I kick people off there all the time. All the time. Just for something that they say. I was talking to the great Carl Jogger about this the other day. He's one of our great moderators. Does a fantastic job of keeping our comments readable, and he does such a great job. We have a community of people over there. And the reason that we have a community there is because Carl and the other moderators have done a great job of keeping out the obscenity and the vulgarity and lots of other stuff that's on there that would just drive people away. I mean, we were talking the other day, and Carl, we looked at the list, the YouTube list. Carl has copied. I mean, there are hundreds of words on this list that if your posting had one of those words in it, we'd kick you right off the channel. We're at zero tolerance. It's like, we are not your third grade teacher. So if you want to drop F-bombs and N-bombs and J-bombs or talk about Adolf Hitler or 1,000 other subjects and use lots and lots of vulgarities and obscenities, you can do that. You just can't do it on my channel. You can't do it. You cannot pollute my thing. So I'm far from an absolutist on free speech. When I hear somebody talk about free speech, you know what that usually means to me? It usually means, Colin, I want the right to go around saying F you to every single person I meet. The other day I got an email from one of the people we kicked off the channel. And he said, Colin, I can't post a comment. I think I've been banned from your channel. What happened? Well, so did you say anything vulgar or obscene or anything like that? He goes, no, I never do that, Colin. So I flashed it over to Carl Jogger and I said, hey, Carl, what's up? What do we know about this guy? Carl gives me, 2 hours later, Carl gives me a copy of the correspondence with the guy, where the guy's basically using, he's trying to figure out a way to use every one of our hundreds of banned words and directing them all at Carl, who was basically the nicest guy in the world. So it's amazing how often this happens. People call and they go, Colin, why can't I comment on your videos anymore, Colin? And I always ask the same thing. Do you use the obscenities? No, Colin. But when I check, it always happens that they're always not just using them, they're using them by the bucket full. I mean, one guy, a few months ago on YouTube, I checked, I went back and checked his comments that we kicked him off for. The ones he said he had nothing to do with about, any bad language or anything like that. And all he did was drop an F-bomb for like 100 times. He just said F, 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 like 100 times. What really I don't really get annoyed too much around here. I mean, sometimes I get a little grumpy maybe, but not too annoyed. I try to practice detachment after seeing all this ridiculous, horrific level of crime and violence from the fellas and their lovely ladies and the reporters and public officials who are looking at it going, well, Colin, I don't see anything. But I do get annoyed when people put me in the position of being the third prissy third grade schoolmarm. And so that's why we just have zero tolerance. It's like, take it somewhere else. It's not going to be here. We have a nice comment page where people, I love the comments, not just because we're building a community, but we're building a place where people are sending me stories. We build a place where people give me funny lines. So my biggest complaint about doing these videos and these podcasts is sometimes I don't get the greatest lines, the funniest lines, the best thing to say until after the thing comes out. So I try to save them for later. But there are some funny, smart, interesting people who are really, really into telling the truth about this whole business of racial violence and how it's out of proportion and how so many people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it. And I'm really committed to keeping those people here, and I'm really committed to keeping our page a family-friendly place where people could talk about this. I mean, that's what we're doing here, right? One of the things we're doing is we are really trying to show each other how we can talk about this plainly, but without racism or rancor or apologies. You notice we never do well, I'm sure all the people in St. Louis that are ignoring the stop signs, all the black people who are ignoring the stop signs in St. Louis they're not all black people are doing that, or whatever the apologies are. We just don't do the apologies. We're just documenting this and telling the truth. And if you can't handle it, okay. Some people cannot. But for the people who cannot handle it, it's always something. It's always like, well, Colin, I don't like the way you raised your eyebrow. I don't like the way you say fellas. I don't like the way you say the word sitte. I don't like how you use that expression, chocolate sitte. Colin, if you could be just a lot more boring, we'd get our message out a lot more. Well, that's not going to happen. So now we get back to this whole free speech thing. And so I've been kicked off YouTube, and I should be the biggest proponent of free speech, saying, hey, I should have a right to say that in a public square, as long as I'm not, even breaking my own rules. And it's funny, of all the times you get kicked off, it's always for one reason: it's for violating community standards. What are community standards? It's what anything a troll says they are. So some troll wakes up in the morning, gets out of the wrong side of the bed, makes a complaint to YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. And if that complaint gets in the right email queue at the right time, bingo, you are suspended or expelled from those places. And so I kind of even so here I am, putting up lists saying, oh yeah, I'm worse than YouTube. If you drop an N-bomb around here, you are gone. So I understand what CPAC is trying to do. But this is all about drawing lines, right? It's like, okay, where do we draw the line? How do we have free speech without hurting our own cause? I get that. But here's the one thing that I've observed among conservative activists, and especially people who call themselves Republicans, but not necessarily conservatives. They're so worried about offending CNN and MSNBC. It's like, oh, we can't say anything that'll get them all pissed off at us, Colin. No, that's not going to help us. And so in a way, CNN and MSNBC in many ways set the agenda for lots and lots of Republicans and conservatives. Because it's always something. It's always something. The plain fact is, every single video we make here would probably also be unpalatable to the people who run CPAC. I don't really care about that. But it does point to the same problem, which is the media has been beating the hell out of opposing points of view to their liberal orthodoxy for 50 years, and there's lots and lots of signs that people are starting to fight back. People like Dinesh D'Souza, people like Jim Hoft, people like Pam Gellar, and in my own humble way, my humble self. But CPAC, the CPAC functionaries, they just don't want any part of it. So let's not just talk about CPAC. Let's talk about conservatives in general and Republicans. They don't want any part of this black violence wildly out of proportion discussion. Every time it rolls around, somebody's always diverting it to talk about, Kyle, we got to have jobs. And if we have jobs, well, that'll solve the whole crime problem. Fairy tale. Fact is, there's not really that much difference between a whole lot of Democrats and a whole lot of Republicans on looking at this problem of black criminality wildly out of proportion and yeah, in parentheses, ignoring, denying, condoning it, looking at it, there's not much difference. I mean, I was watching a debate in Oakland the other day, Alameda County, the district attorney. They have the incumbent's been in there for 8 years, and she's going up against a so-called civil rights attorney, the same kind that they have in St. Louis and Philadelphia and Chicago and Corpus Christi and lots of other places now. That's a thing now, right? George Soros is putting money into district attorney races, and Black Lives Matter is putting their voice into district attorney races in these cities with big chocolate populations. It's a winning formula. And it's been a disaster, and it's been and will be a disaster. There was a headline just yesterday in the Philadelphia newspaper. This guy Krasner, he was elected in the fall, took office in January. He said, "Listen, we're going to issue no cash bail for like 50 crimes, where before you had to put up bail because the big buzzword is, we're not going to criminalize poverty." And so I read this article, and Philly, I kept looking, okay, and they were saying, "Oh, this is great, this is fantastic," and all these people were going, "Oh yeah, this is going to help black people because everybody knows black people are always getting arrested for no damn reason whatsoever. So this is going to, decriminalize black people who are sitting in jail when they should be out being with their families." But these fairy tales just keep heaping on themselves, don't they? And so one of the, and I kept reading the article going down, 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 down. Finally got to the bottom and they started listing, it said 50 offenses, right? 50 offenses. And, a couple of maybe some kind of drug use, some kind of this, some kind of that. One of them was burglary. So you can go into a house in Philly, they had certain types of burglary. Oh, okay. Okay, and they only gave you like a paragraph of what it was. They didn't even tell you what kind of burglary. And they're doing the exact same thing in Chicago. All over the country, whether they're doing this via election or not, this is a thing now. Every Democratic machine, every black office holder is down with this. In Chicago, the big headline from a couple of months ago was, 6,000 people are in Chicago jails. It's a record low. And everybody was celebrating the fact that because of no cash bail, because we're not going to arrest our way out of this mess, because of all these other reasons, the inmate population is way down. But then if you go to Chicago and you talk to people and you read the stories, you'll see people in neighborhoods are going, "Oh yeah, we've never had this problem before. Oh yeah, we're having a lot of problem in the Loop. That's the nice neighborhood of Chicago. The one where the fellas go, they're not supposed to go because we all know criminals, they just do their business, outside of their front house. And they don't travel in groups to the Loop and beat the hell out of people like they've been doing recently." And so it's weird. We got all these neighborhoods in Chicago going, "Yeah, we never saw this before." Does that have any relationship with the fact that they're arresting far fewer people and keeping far fewer people in jail? Oh no, Colin, they can't be related in any way. Colin, have you done a 27-year longitudinal sociological study showing that what you said is true? Talk about free speech. You go to a college campus and you mention any one of these things, you're going to have hundreds of college students shutting you down with the full support of the administration. You don't think professors understand that when they start thinking about what I can and cannot research, where I can and cannot get grants for research, how I can or cannot be on a track to be a professor in this institution? You think those professors are going to start doing stories documenting all this black criminality and how people are in denial, deceit, and delusion about it? Yeah, they do that only if they have a big fat trust fund and they want to get fired. So instead, we get professors churning out studies using something called symbolic racism tests. I mean, the tests basically say, do you believe black people have or can get ahead in this country if they work harder? If you answer yes to that, that means you're a racist. Because nobody's going to, they do a test on you. When they do it, when they want to figure out, like, who's a racist or not, because they want to attach it to something else, like they'll say, well, we know that being a racist means you support the NRA. But how do you know if somebody's a racist? You have to give them a test. And you have to give them a test without really knowing what kind of test that they're taking. So if you think affirmative action is bad, if you think special treatment for people is based on race is bad, then you're on you go right down, you get a little check mark next to your name that you are a racist. Curiously, I've never heard of a symbolic racism test for black people. I don't think one exists, does it? And so a lot of conservatives and Republicans are so worried about people coming at them. And they just, as soon as they see it coming, their only defense is, no matter what the issue is, somebody always pops up and says, oh, that's racist, you're a racist. And so then, no matter what the idea is, no matter how good the idea is, we're off the idea, and this person, this proponent, this speaker, whomever it is, they have to go around for the next 10 years explaining to people they're not racist. Oh, do you think that wall between the United States and Mexico is a good idea? Yeah. Well, you're a racist. Okay, next 10 years. Oh, no, I'm not a racist. No, I'm not a racist. No, I'm not a racist. That's all we got. That's all we have. We apologize, we cower, and that's it. That's our big defense. That's why there's such a vacuum in these cities. That's why there's no difference between lots of black politicians, lots of white politicians. Oh yeah, the Oakland politician, she said at this big debate in Oakland, the incumbent DA, she said, I've always said the best way to stop a bullet is with a job. I mean, this is the kind of thing you hear at the Republican National Committee convention. People standing up and talking about, well, you have to incentivize the urban area so we can have urban renewal and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we've been doing for 60 years, and everybody just wants to keep doing it more and more and more, including Republicans. We have to rebuild the urban areas, Colin. That way we can get some black people some jobs by creating black employment zones, full incentives. Yeah, what happens when you put a white business in a black neighborhood? Well, Colin, what are you talking about? You have any 27-year longitudinal studies of that to show the white businesses are targets? No, just have a lot of white business people that won't move in those neighborhoods because they used to be there and they moved out. Big story in the Baltimore Sun today. Surprise! Businesses are subjects of lots of burglaries and violence down in Baltimore. Surprise! Who do you think's doing it? The fellas! And do you think the only reason the fellas are doing that is because we haven't incentivized the sin in the city, Colin? We have to give them jobs. Well, we can have 1 million jobs if you don't want to show up for it. I mean, that's the most important thing for a job. If you don't show up for it, if you don't want it, I mean, what's the point? I mean, there are so many issues where people have to speak plainly about, but there are so many Republicans cowering in their penny loafers when people start speaking plainly about it. Listen, I was listening to this, Sean Hannity show last night. It was good. I listened to Pence this morning. I was looking forward to hearing all those speakers. But if you're going to be in that room, if you're going to be the one to puff out your chest and tell everybody you're the conservative leader, you're the Republican opinion leader, you're the thought leader, when you're confronted with that, you're not allowed to run and hide in the closet when it happens. You're not allowed to peep out the door and come out and take credit for the victory when the battle is over. I mean, there's so many lies about the level of black criminality and dysfunction in this country that people just don't have the stones to talk about on any level. And if I went down there to talk about it, those guys, same people that kicked out, that had a disagreement with Gellar and Dinesh D'Souza and Jim Hoft, well, they'd be pissing their pants if they started hearing me talk about it, just the way we talk about it here. I mean, everybody now. The thing is, it's the mass shooting down in Parkland, Florida, and the Twitter stream was full up with all the black people going, "Oh yeah, Colin, that's a white thing. You white people, that's white people's work. You white people got to clean your act up before you come down to the ghetto and tell us to stop bonking people on the head." Well, that's a myth. It's a hoax. That's a lie. My all-time favorite article in the New York Times, it was about 18 months ago. I think people want to look these up. When you make a video, it's easier to make a reference to this. But when you make I think the headline was something like, "A drumbeat of mass shootings, but no one is listening." And the article, it's funny, the Times, they go down the article, it's like, what you do in these articles, right? It's like somebody, you start, probably 80% of the time, when you start, you pretty much know what the article's already about. But I think sometimes these articles veer off in a weird way, and the reporters kind of have a tiger by the tail, and they either have to walk away from it, or they have to just do it and hope it makes a difference. Well, I think that's what happened with this article. They had a couple of reporters on it. They start looking at mass shootings. And there's so many different definitions of mass shootings. They started looking at mass shootings, and they found out that 70 to 75% of mass shootings are done by the fellas and their lovely ladies. 70 to 75%. Do you think anybody at CPAC would have the nuts, the stones, to go up there and talk about that? We had Wayne LaPierre up there this morning. I mean, there's a guy's. He's not, he'll tell it like it is when it comes to guns. But even the NRA, when it comes to this topic, they're very, very shy about talking about the level of black criminality in this country and how so many white people are victims of it. And I know all the stories about the NRA. I know the stories about the origin of gun control, how the Southern Democrats put gun control on because they didn't want black people to have guns. That's a true story. Lots of people from Malcolm X to, I think, even the family of Martin Luther King, I think they had guns in their lives for protection. But everybody at CPAC, the CPAC types are they're just terrified of this. And because they're so terrified, because there's no pushback, all of a sudden there's a big vacuum, and into the vacuum goes all the liberal losers, and they use it to beat the crap out of conservatives whenever they can. That's what's happening in all these cities now. Oakland, Chicago, Philadelphia, Cleveland, Cincinnati. So many cities all over the country where it's all, Milwaukee, it's all about racism. And nobody wants to be there. Nobody wants to be in the front lines to say, no, it's not really about racism. It's about black dysfunction. And how the newspapers and how about you are in total denial, deceit, and delusion about it, despite this overwhelming thing that many, many people know on some level or another, that black criminality and violence is wildly out of proportion in this country. But you're sitting there giving us the fairy tale that the opposite is true, that black people are victims. And the only reason there's more black people in prison than white people per capita is because black people are victims of white racism. I mean, we had people like Rand Paul saying that last year, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie. During the Republican primary, we did videos of all the Republicans when they kind of signed off on this whole criminal justice reform thing. John Kasich, Jeb Bush. I mean, everybody was buying off on the fact white racism keeping people down, except for two people, Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. So at some point in we did a video a couple days ago about the big lie of mass shootings, how it's a black thing. Lots of pushback for people going, "No, Colin, that's not true. Oh no, it's not true, Colin. No, you made that up." In the New York Times, yay. Oh, anyway, let me. I'm sorry if I skip around, but let me just put the period on the exclamation point at the end of the New York Times story. So they put all this research into their article. And when they came up, I think they found something that was totally unexpected to them, that this was all a black thing. 80% is a black thing, the mass shooters. A couple days ago, we did a video of some recent black mass shootings. And today I got two more of my emails, two recent ones. Why don't we listen to them? Because I like giving, I think one of the powerful things that we have to do here and everywhere else when we speak plainly is also to use very plain examples. Let's give a listen to these two recent stories.
Yeah, Lauren, well, Shantae Harris tells me that her daughter was shot 5 times in the hip area. The 18-year-old is not only a cancer survivor, but an amputee as well.
I was at a party and a bunch of gang-related members just came in shooting.
Recovering inside her hospital room at St. Luke's, Dorena, who did not want to be fully identified, shared this video message with Fox 4.
I was shot 5 times, 3 times in my left leg and twice in my right.
She's one of several young people who attended what was being promoted as a rave inside a used car dealership called the Horseless Carriage in Kansas City, Kansas, Saturday night. They were there to see Casey rapper Lindell.
To my understanding, this local rapper has enemies, they Facebook phone.
Dorena's mom, Shantae Harris, says she panicked when she heard her daughter was one of 8 people shot following what police would only call a disturbance inside the business.
She said she had to crawl her way to a door. People were stampeding and, falling over each other.
What led to the shooting is still being investigated, but Dorena told her mom it may have stemmed from the popping of a balloon.
The balloon popped, then next thing they heard was gunfire.
A man in his 20s was killed. 7 others are expected to survive, including Dorena.
She's talking to us, she's smiling, she's happy to be here.
Shantae says her daughter is not a bad child and was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
She works, she's not in the streets starting no trouble.
She challenged Wyandotte County to offer more opportunities for young people looking for things to do on the weekends.
When I was coming up, you had the skating ring, you had Indian Springs, the Fun Factory, you had different things, entities to do. They don't have that now.
Right now, multiple people are in the hospital after a mass shooting at a Fraser nightclub. Good evening, I'm Mary Jo Ola. Memphis police say the shooting happened around 2 this morning outside of Club Bosses. That's near the corner of Delwood Avenue and North Watkins. The club owner says this is the first violent activity that's happened near his club in the last year, but community activists say once is enough. Local 24's Annette Pegler has tonight's top story.
Signs like this one surround Club Bosses in Fraser just hours after 5 people were shot in the parking lot. Community leaders are making a plea to the public tonight to put down the guns and do the right thing.
This is not the norm.
Stevie Moore, president of FUN, which stands for Freedom from Unnecessary Negatives, is fed up. He's putting up these signs that read, "Education is key, stop the killing," in response to Saturday morning's mass shooting outside of Club Bosses.
This shouldn't happen. 5 people in one night. What are we going to say? How can we explain this?
Memphis police say around 2 a.m. Saturday, someone shot 5 people outside of this club. The victims include 4 males ages 37, 34, 21, and 20, and a 19-year-old female who has since been released.
The guy was walking to his vehicle. Some guys from the street just started opening up fire, from my understanding, and I think a few people got hit that might have been with him. It was a birthday party. The building was rented out.
The business owner, who did not want to give his name, says security is his top priority.
It's not too many guns out there. It's just guns in the hands of inexperienced people.
Meanwhile, Moore wants more families to get involved and care about the neighborhoods they live in.
When I was getting in trouble, somebody told it on me. This shooting last night, somebody knew about it and knew about it before it happened. And we got to fight it.
And so there's the mother and her playing her role in the kabuki play, The Black Mom. her role is to come out and say, well, it's not really their fault. It's their fault because they don't have enough stuff to do. When we were coming up, we had skating rinks. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. What a disaster black skating rinks are and still are. Check out Don't Make the Black Kids Angry for That story out of Baltimore. Good Lord. Lots of shootings at skating rinks, and bowling alleys. And it's not the white kids doing it, it's the black kids. It's easy to see that. So she came up with the old, we had bowling alleys and skating rinks and the kids need something to do. And so the kids don't have anything to do except go to a rap concert, a rage, where the main performer is all about guns, drugs, money, bitches, and murder. That's the only alternative. Nothing or that. I mean, is that how they roll in Wakanda? They don't have any bowling alleys in Wakanda, do they? They don't have any skating rinks. They don't have any rec centers. You do have mom and dads, that's for sure. That's another thing about Wakanda. Everybody's married. Everybody has kids. Bingo. And so in that neighborhood where that mass shooting took place, that's all there was. That's the only alternatives. Nobody has books. There are no movies. There are no, what do kids do when they're kids? They can do whatever the hell they want to do. As long as it does involve taking out guns and shooting people. It doesn't seem that big of a concept to grasp. I mean, and there are so many stories to tell. We did a story a few days ago. I mean, it's like every story we do is just like a little thimble inside of a current, a waterfall. Take it out. So yeah, there it is. There's a lot more out there. We just did a story the other day about how this one little town in St. Louis, in one little suburb of St. Louis, a black section of St. Louis, a chocolate city. Nobody was obeying the traffic signs. Kids were getting hit by cars. And we reminded everybody that Eric Holder made that the big bait switch of his administration. They couldn't pin the killing of Michael Brown on Darren Wilson. They couldn't pin the riots on Darren Wilson. So 7 months later, Eric Holder comes out and goes, we finally figured out what's causing the riots. It's because cops were giving out too many traffic tickets. Message, cops all over the country, quit giving out traffic tickets. Or we'll come down hard on you for racial profiling. Cops got the message. Cops got the message in St. Louis. Cops got the message in Kansas City. The great Jack Cashill is involved in an enterprise in Kansas City. They have a kind of an alternative news website out there for what's going on out there. They had a big story yesterday. Kind of the same theme as the story we did a couple days ago about St. Louis, which is cops are making far fewer traffic stops. So the fellas have gotten the word that, people weren't really obeying traffic laws before. They're blowing through stop signs before. And now because of far fewer traffic stops, they've got more traffic accidents and pedestrian fatalities. And now we get this story out of St. Louis in front of a school where another kid gets hit by a car. And the thing you see on the video, you won't be able to hear on this tape, this audio version of it is, trumpeting across the banner in front of the school is, it's Black History Month.
New at noon, a third-grade girl rushed to the hospital after she was hit by a car outside her elementary school. The child was hit as she was crossing the street this morning near Griffith Elementary, that's in Ferguson. A school spokesperson tells News 4 the girl was conscious as she was transported.
So much truth to tell, so few people willing to tell it. I mean, what about all the black harassment, threats, and violence directed at cops? How many stories have we done on that? Here's one recent one.
Erica, Rob, hearts are very heavy here at the 18th District right here behind me, where Commander Bauer was the commander here for about 2 years. We interviewed Commander Paul Bauer back in 2013. At that time, he was the lieutenant of the CPD Mounted Police Unit. He spoke to us about his love of horses and working in the unit.
There's no better way to move a crowd than with a horse. They don't want to touch the horse, nor do they want to get the horse to step on them. You don't have to buy them lunch. They don't complain.
In 2012, we interviewed Bauer about a break-in where the horses are kept on the grounds of the South Shore Cultural Center. The animals were deliberately injured. Bauer expressed during the interview how much he cared about the horses.
They did not enter this to commit a theft. Rather, it appears they entered this to maliciously harm our horses. For what reason? I don't know.
Now, we're told Bauer was well loved and known for his megawatt smile and being a devoted family man and truly being devoted to the men and women here at the 18th District Police Station. And on a personal note, about 2 years ago at a charity function, I met the commander, and he was incredibly happy and proud to be serving here on the near north side at this district and could not wait to start his position.
What about the ridiculous level of violence and dysfunction on public transit systems? I mean, we've been doing stories on BART for almost a year now. It's just regular. It's like boom, boom, boom. If it's Tuesday, that must mean a bunch of black people got on a BART train and dragged somebody off the train or beat the hell out of them. That's what happened 2 nights ago. They dragged a guy off of a train and beat the hell out of them. Then the next day, we had this story.
So what happened was the victim was by the door with his phone. 4 teenagers come right to the door next to him, grab his cell phone.
The snatch and grab cell phone robbery happened at 11 a.m. Tuesday here at the Powell Street station in San Francisco. BART spokesperson Alicia Trost describes how the reaction of the victim escalated the snatch and grab robbery to a violent assault.
The victim didn't give the cell phone up, so they struggled for the phone and then came out to the platform. The struggle continues. The victim falls. The 4 teenagers basically grab that phone, run up and out of the station so fast.
This is not the first snatch and grab robbery involving teenagers targeting BART passengers this year. In fact, Trost says 4 teenagers robbed a passenger of their cell phone this past weekend at the Ashby BART station in Berkeley.
We do have cell phone snatchings. They are a reality all over the Bay Area. I hear about them at coffee shops and malls, but also on BART because people get distracted. They'll stand and just have their nose in their phone, and I understand, the trying to pass the time, but when the doors open, that is the time we want all of our riders to be very aware.
Because these cell phone thieves are juveniles, the only description BART police can provide is that they were all males, and they were all able to avoid officers here at the BART police substation as they got away. BART police investigators are checking surveillance videos to see if there's a connection between the 2 cell phone robberies involving teens here at Powell Street and the Ashby station in Berkeley. In San Francisco, Hazik Medyoun, KRON 4 News.
So we got black people rampaging through BART, and the best this spokesman for BART, the Bay Area Rapid Transit System, can tell us is that the passengers on the train, white people and Asian people, pretty much they should be keeping their head on a swivel and not using headphones or not reading books because, well, if you do all those things, that's just an invitation for black people to come and rob you. And not once did that reporter say, where are the videos on that? Oh, we can't show you the videos because they're juveniles. I mean, that's like one of those things that you say that sounds like it makes sense, but it doesn't make a damn bit of sense whatsoever. Because there are a lot of places in this country where they publish videos and pictures of juveniles in the commission of violent crime because they know the public has to be aware of who's doing it. It's a public safety thing. But why don't they do it at BART? It's the reason I like talking about BART, because we caught them telling the truth a few months ago. It was a really weird story. It was weird in tone. It was weird where it happened in the news business in San Francisco. It happened on a very soft news show. They had a member of the board of directors of BART. This starts off a little slow. You guys might remember this. But if you didn't remember it, listen to this. And again, it starts a little slow. But even when they're talking about something really dramatic and really important, it doesn't sound that way, does it?
And joining us now to talk all things BART, we have BART Director Deborah Allen with us. Thank you so much for being here. And Deborah, I understand you represent Contra Costa on the Board of Directors. Now, as you go about riding BART and speaking with BART riders who want to tell you their concerns, what are they saying about safety on BART these days?
I think people are genuinely concerned. They are fearful about the stories that have come out about the recent attacks, the assaults, the thefts. They're concerned.
Yeah, we've got the April 22nd assault. That was the 40 to 60 teenagers. We've got the June 28th, 4 teenagers. And then June 30th, 10 to 13 teenagers, all iPhone, cell phone robberies. And you're saying people are nervous. Are they happy, or are they satisfied with the kind of information that BART is disclosing about these actions?
I've received a number of requests and comments from riders to ask me to press for the release of the video of these incidents. And the reason for that is they want to see for themselves what's going on the trains, and they want to learn from that and determine how they can protect themselves a little better and be less vulnerable to those types of crimes on the trains.
Now, we've heard that BART has said that it's because there are minors involved, and that's why they're not able to release the videos. Is that your understanding?
Right. Originally, the April attack, the BART did say that because they were minors involved, and involved in addition to that, the investigation, when something is under investigation, they are not required to release the video. Mm-hmm. But I've since learned that in that April attack, there was a 19-year-old who was arrested and detained who is not a minor. And so there would be reason for at least the video of that person to be released.
Yeah, and you would think maybe they could blur the faces of other folks. So if it's not because they're minors, because we know at least one of them isn't, what is it?
Well, so I asked that question recently, asked why can't we release these videos? And the answer was initially that, well, normally cities don't release videos of these types of crimes. And I said, yes, but this is BART. You know, people are sort of trapped in this train for a while, right. and they have a right to see what could potentially happen. And the next answer was that to release these videos would create a high level of racially insensitive commentary toward the district. And in addition, it would create a racial bias in the riders against minorities on the trains.
So they were saying that, and I assume the implication is that these crimes, or at least some of them, have been conducted by minorities, and so they don't want to release the footage because then that would somehow cause
a racial bias.
A racial bias?
Right.
Did they say... So if it were a video showing white teenagers robbing someone, we would have the video by now? Is that the implication?
That is not a question I asked, but that might be a good question.
Wow. What about the passengers? What about their rights to, as you said, protect themselves, see what's happening so they can know, like, if there's a place that they should sit or other ways that they can prevent these things from happening?
Right. I think this goes back to priorities at BART. It's something I often talk about on a wide variety of subjects. What is the priority of BART? Is the safety of the passenger, of all passengers. Is that a lesser priority than the racial bias issue?
So who's going to speak up against BART? Who's going to be the one to go to BART and say, hey, we know what you're up to. We know the only reason you're not releasing those videos is because the videos will show black people rampaging through your stations, causing an immense amount of crime and violence, and you're in on it. If you had the videos and you're not showing us, you're not telling us, you're enabling it, you're an accessory. Is anybody at CPAC going to be brave enough in their hometown to talk about their version of that in their hometown? Or are they just going to sit there, come up with all these great conservative ideas, and every time a black person or a liberal doesn't like it and calls them a racist for proposing it, they're just going to run for the closest dark closet they can find? Listen, CPAC people, I didn't ask you to become thought leaders and opinion leaders on this conservative thing. This conservative thing where it's all about the individual. It's not about race identity politics. I didn't ask you to do that. You volunteered. We're counting on you. And in the other areas, everybody's doing fine as far as I can tell. I mean, everything's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it would have been had Hillary been in there. But around the country, conservatives are just absent. This goes to a lot of conservative media too. Conservatives are just absent when it comes time to call out this level of black crime, violence, and dysfunction. Nobody wants a piece of it. Nobody wants a piece of the headaches. Nobody wants a piece of the threats of violence and violence. So I'm sorry I'm not going to make CPAC this year. I'm still looking forward to going to the Night for Freedom, Night of Freedom Cernovich put on. He put one on in New York a couple months ago. Had a lot of fun there. Met a lot of people who watched these videos were there. That was a really great event. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's this Saturday night. Now, one of my big enthusiastic followers on this podcast and on my videos, we were going to go down together, or at least thinking about it. But he called up, sent an email saying, "Hey, I have to know where this place is because I might have some medical issues to deal with at, whatever." He felt like he needed to know a little bit more about where a place is. But the way the Cernovich party works, the Night for Freedom, is they don't tell you where the party is till a couple hour or two before, because they basically don't want the headaches of all these crazy demonstrators coming out and enacting a bunch of violence on them. Anyway, so Cernovich sent him a note back saying, "Hey, you sound like you're trying to infiltrate our party. So if I see you're even buying a ticket, I'm going to refund you your money. So careful how you try to buy one of those tickets. Don't ask too many questions." So I'm going to get myself a ticket. I'm going to go down there. I hope I see a lot of you guys down there. If you see me down there, come up and say hello. I'll be the guy walking around asking if the barmaids, if they have any champagne or coffee at that event. And I'll be very curious to talk to other people there who were at CPAC. Be curious to get their reaction to this podcast. I'll be curious because I think a lot of the reason they're having this thing on the 24th is to kind of tailgate with the CPAC event. So I'll be curious to hear if anybody's reactions to it, whether it's just all talk or whether we've got some real warriors in there, or whether we just have a lot of people who want to be warriors, but they're just afraid of making the black kids angry.